Happy last month of 2025. Can we be real for a second? This year was hard, but you're still here, still watching, still showing up. That deserves recognition. So here's what I'm asking. Like this video, not for me, for you, as proof that you finished the year engaged, present, and ready for whatever comes next. Let that like button be your December 1st victory, the first W of the final month. You've earned it. Now let's begin. The crystal chandeliers of the Azure Pearl Hotel cast dancing shadows across marble floors, so polished they reflected the anxiety in Layla Hassan's eyes. She stood motionless in the service corridor, her small frame pressed against the cool wall, watching the controlled chaos unfold in the grand lobby. The scent of imported roses mingled with the sharp tang of lemon polish, a smell she'd grown to associate with her mother's exhausted hands each night. At 17, Layla had perfected the art of invisibility. She'd learned to move through the opulent spaces of Dubai's most exclusive hotel like a ghost, carrying her mother's forgotten lunch or delivering fresh towels to the housekeeping cart. The wealthy guests who swept through the gold-trimmed doors never noticed her. To them, she was merely part of the furniture, another brown-skinned girl in a plain abaya, unworthy of a second glance. But today felt different. Today the air itself seemed to crackle with tension. Hotel staff rushed past her with unusual urgency, their whispered Arabic carrying fragments of a name that made even the general manager's hands tremble. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mazrui. Layla's fingers tightened around the worn book she always carried, a collection of Arabic poetry her late father had given her. The leather cover was soft from years of handling, the pages filled with her father's marginalia in 3 languages, Arabic, English, and Urdu. He'd been a linguistics professor once, before the illness that drained their savings and left her mother scrubbing toilets in 5-star hotels. Layla! Her mother's voice cut through her thoughts. Fatima Hassan appeared at the corridor's end, her housekeeping uniform crisp despite the humid Dubai heat that seeped even into air-conditioned spaces. Sweat beaded at her temples, and her dark eyes held that particular mixture of love and worry that Layla had memorized over 17 years. Habibi, you shouldn't be here. If Mr. Richardson sees you... I know, Mama. Layla stepped forward, pressing the small container of food into her mother's calloused hands. But you forgot your lunch again. You didn't eat yesterday either. Fatima's expression softened, but before she could respond, a commotion erupted in the lobby. The massive entrance door swung open and a wave of black-suited security personnel flooded in, followed by men in pristine white kanduras and women in elegant abayas. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, and through the gap walked a man who commanded attention without uttering a single word. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mazrui. Even from her hidden vantage point, Layla could feel the power radiating from him. He appeared to be in his late 50s, his beard more salt than pepper, his weathered face telling stories of desert winds and boardroom battles.
His kandura was impossibly white, his gutra held in place by an agal that probably cost more than her mother's annual salary. But it was his eyes that arrested her, dark, intelligent, and sharp enough to cut through pretense. "He owns half of Dubai," her mother whispered, unconsciously smoothing her uniform. "They say he can make or break careers with a single word. Ya Allah, please let everything go smoothly." The general manager, Robert Richardson, a perpetually stressed British man who treated staff like replaceable parts, scurried forward with an obsequious smile. "Your Excellency, welcome to the Azure Pearl. We are honored beyond measure." Sheikh Rashid held up one hand, silencing him mid-grovel. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority, but there was something else too, a weariness perhaps, or disappointment. "I require the Windsor suite, immediately. My granddaughter will be joining me within the hour, and I expect everything to be perfect." "Of course, Your Excellency. The Windsor suite has been prepared to your exact specifications, if you would follow." In a moment, the Sheikh's gaze swept the lobby, taking in every detail with the precision of a man who'd built an empire by noticing what others missed. His eyes paused on the staff lined up against the far wall. Waiters, concierge, housekeepers, all standing at rigid attention. "First, I have a question." The lobby fell silent. Even the fountain seemed to quiet its bubbling. Sheikh Rashid's next words came in classical Arabic, the kind spoken in ancient poetry and Quranic recitation, formal, elegant, and completely unexpected. أيما يمكنني أن أجد الحكمة في زمن يبيع فيه الناس أرواحهم من أجل الذهب? Where can I find wisdom in an age when people sell their souls for gold? The question hung in the air like smoke. Richardson's face faltered, his face blank with incomprehension. His assistant, a young Emirati man named Khalid, who'd been hired for his family connections rather than competence, shifted uncomfortably, clearly understanding the words, but paralyzed by the weight of answering. The Western staff exchanged confused glances. Even some of the Arab employees seemed frozen, uncertain whether this was a test, a philosophical musing, or a trap. Seconds stretched into eternity. The Sheikh's expression darkened incrementally, a storm gathering behind those penetrating eyes. His entourage waited, silent witnesses to what was clearly becoming a judgment. Layla felt her mother's hand grip her arm, a silent plea to remain invisible, to not draw attention, to remember their place in this world of marble and money. But her father's voice echoed in her memory, reciting from Rumi during their evening lessons in their tiny apartment. "Speak, even if your voice shakes. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. Silence in the face of truth is betrayal." The Sheikh began to turn away, disgust evident in the set of his shoulders, and Layla stepped forward. Her mother's gasp was audible. Richardson's eyes widened in horror as he spotted the unauthorized girl in the plain black abaya, her weathered book clutched to her chest, stepping into the presence of a man who could buy and sell them all without checking his bank balance. But Layla kept walking, her father's poetry book giving her courage, until she stood at the edge of the Sheikh's vision. Then, in the same classical Arabic he'd used, her voice clear despite its tremor, she answered, "الحكمة موجودة حيث يجرؤ الناس على طرح السؤال يا سيدي وليس في أولئك الذين يخشون الإجابة." Wisdom exists where people dare to ask the question, sir, not in those who fear to answer. The lobby froze. Every eye turned to her. Her mother's face had gone pale. Richardson looked as though he might have a stroke. Security moved forward, hands reaching to remove this impertinent child. But Sheikh Rashid raised his hand again, stopping them mid-step. Slowly, deliberately, he turned to face Layla fully. His eyes locked onto hers, searching, measuring, seeing, perhaps for the first time in years, something unexpected, in a place he'd expected only gilded mediocrity. "And who," he asked softly, still in classical Arabic, "are you?" Before Layla could answer, Richardson rushed forward, his face red with fury and fear. "Your Excellency, I apologize profusely. This girl is not staff. She's the daughter of one of our housekeepers. She has no business being here. I'll have her removed immediately." "I asked her," he said, his tone dropping several degrees in temperature. Layla felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Her mother's whispered prayer reached her ears. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power except with Allah. She could lie, she could apologize and disappear back into invisibility. She could protect herself and her mother from the consequences of stepping out of line. or she could answer truthfully.
Layla lifted her chin, meeting the Sheikh's gaze directly, an act of either courage or insanity. "My name is Layla Hassan, sir. My mother is Fatima Hassan, a housekeeper here. My late father was Professor Karim Hassan, who taught linguistics at the University of Sharjah before his illness. He taught me that language is the bridge between souls, and that true wisdom speaks in any tongue to those willing to listen." The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Layla registered that she just sealed her mother's fate. Richardson would fire them both before sunset. They'd lose their housing, their income, everything. But as she stood there, her father's book pressed over her racing heart, she felt something she hadn't experienced since his death 3 years ago. The fierce pride of honoring his legacy, whatever the cost. Sheikh Rashid studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, impossibly, the corners of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but something close to it, something that looked like recognition. "Professor Karim Hassan," he repeated slowly. "I knew that name once. He published a paper on the evolution of Arabic dialects in multilingual households. Brilliant work. I funded his research through my foundation before—" He paused, his eyes softening with what might have been regret. "Before we lost track of him." Layla's breath caught. She'd never known her father had connections to someone like the Sheikh. Her mother had never mentioned it. "Come," Sheikh Rashid said abruptly, gesturing to Layla. "Walk with me to the Windsor suite. I find myself curious about what else the daughter of Karim Hassan has learned." Richardson sputtered. "Your Excellency, this is highly irregular." "Is it?" The Sheikh's voice could have frozen the desert. "I own this hotel, Richardson. I believe I can decide who accompanies me. Now, the girl will come, and her mother will join us. I wish to speak with them both. Is this a problem?" "No, Your Excellency. Of course not. Whatever you wish." As the Sheikh's entourage prepared to move, he looked back at Layla, and this time there was definitely a smile, small but genuine. "Tell me, Layla Hassan, do you know why I asked that particular question in classical Arabic?" Layla thought for a moment, then ventured, "Because classical Arabic is honest. It cannot hide behind slang or modern shortcuts. It demands precision of thought. You wanted to see who in this place of luxury actually possessed genuine knowledge, not merely the appearance of it." The Sheikh's smile widened. "Your father taught you well. Come, I suspect this day is about to become far more interesting than I anticipated." As Layla fell into step beside her stunned mother, following a billionaire sheikh through a hotel lobby full of gaping witnesses, one question burned in her mind. What had just happened? And why did she feel as though her entire life had just pivoted on the axis of a single answered question? Behind them, Richardson's furious whisper to his assistant carried in the acoustically perfect space. "Find out everything about that girl and her mother, everything, and prepare termination papers. The moment the sheikh leaves, they're both gone." But Layla didn't hear it. She was too focused on the impossible reality unfolding before her, following Sheikh Rashid Al-Mazrui toward a future she couldn't begin to imagine. Her father's poetry book still clutched to her chest like a talisman. The chandeliers above seemed to shine brighter, casting new shadows, illuminating new paths. And in the back of her mind, her father's voice whispered a line from Rumi that she'd always loved. "Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray." What would you have done in Layla's position? Would you have stepped forward to answer the sheikh, knowing it might cost your mother her job? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear how you would handle such an impossible choice. The Windsor suite occupied the entire 23rd floor, a sprawling testament to wealth that made Layla's entire apartment building seem like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Persian Gulf, where yachts dotted the turquoise water like floating palaces. The furniture was Italian, the carpets Persian, and the silence, after the elevator doors closed behind the Sheikh's minimal entourage, was profound. Sheikh Rashid gestured to a cream-colored sofa. "Please, sit." Fatima hesitated, her hands automatically moving to smooth her uniform. "Your Excellency, we shouldn't." "Sit," he repeated, gentler this time. "I'm not in the habit of repeating myself, Mrs. Hassan, but for you I'll make an exception. Your husband's work meant something to me once. The least I can do is offer his widow a seat." They sat, Layla acutely aware of how her modest abaya contrasted with the suite's opulence. Her mother perched on the edge of the cushion, back rigid with tension and ingrained deference to authority. The sheikh settled into a chair opposite them, studying them with those penetrating eyes. "Tell me about Karim. How did he die?" The question, direct and unadorned, caught Fatima off guard. Her eyes glistened. "A pancreatic cancer, Your Excellency, 3 years ago. The treatment, we spent everything, sold everything, but it wasn't enough." "And afterwards?" "I took whatever work I could find. Cleaning pays the bills, keeps a roof over Layla's head." The sheikh's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "And his daughter, what does she do besides carry poetry books and speak classical Arabic to strangers?" Layla felt his attention focus on her like sunlight through a magnifying glass. "I study, sir. Online courses when I can afford the internet. I work part-time at a bookstore in Dera. I help translate documents for small businesses, legal papers, contracts, letters, anything to practice what my father taught me." "Which languages?" "Arabic, English, Urdu fluently, conversational French and Farsi. I'm teaching myself Mandarin, but it's slow going without a tutor." She paused, then added quietly, "My father believed languages were maps to understanding human hearts. Each one showed a different way of seeing the world." Something shifted in the sheikh's expression, a crack in the armor of wealth and power. "Karim told me something similar once at a conference in Abu Dhabi. He said, 'Money builds walls, but words build bridges.' I dismissed it as academic idealism." He leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Layla Hassan, what do you fear most?" The question struck her like a physical blow. Her mother's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "What do I fear most?" The truth rose unbidden. "That my father's dreams for me will die with him. That I'll spend my life invisible, my potential buried under dirty sheets and bathroom tiles. That I'll disappoint the man who believed I could be extraordinary." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That I already have." The sheikh nodded slowly, as if she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. When he spoke again, his voice carried an unexpected weight of shared grief. "My granddaughter, Amira, arrives in 30 minutes. She's 16, brilliant, beautiful, and utterly lost. 6 months ago, her parents, my son and daughter-in-law, died in a car accident in London." He paused, composing himself. "Since then, she's spoken to no one. Not her therapists, not her teachers, not me. She communicates only through notes, and even those have become rare." Layla's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry, Your Excellency." "She arrives today from her boarding school in Switzerland, expelled for refusing to engage. I've exhausted every expert, every method." His eyes locked onto Layla's. "But watching you step forward today, fearless despite everything you had to lose, made me wonder.
Perhaps what she needs isn't another expert. Perhaps she needs someone who understands that words can be bridges. Fatima stiffened. Your Excellency, surely you're not suggesting. I am suggesting exactly that. I want to hire your daughter as my granddaughter's companion to help her find her voice again. The words hung in the perfumed air like a prayer no one dared answer. The offer landed like a meteor in Layla's carefully ordered world. Her mother's sharp intake of breath echoed her own shock.
Your Excellency, Fatima began carefully, my daughter has no formal training in therapy or... I didn't ask for a therapist. I have 5 of those, all useless. Sheikh Rashid's frustration bled through his composed exterior. I'm asking for a friend, someone genuine, someone who understands loss. Layla's mind raced. This was impossible. Girls like her didn't get offers from billionaires. This was the territory of fairy tales, not real life in Dubai where class lines were drawn in permanent ink. What exactly would this entail? She asked, her voice steadier than her hammering heart. You would move into my estate in Emirates Hills. Private quarters, of course. Your role would be to spend time with Amira. Talk, read, simply be present. Help her reconnect with the world. He named a monthly salary that made Fatima gasp audibly. It was more than she earned in a year. And if I fail? Layla pressed. If she doesn't respond to me either? Then at least I'll have tried something different. His eyes held a desperation that vast wealth couldn't mask. Will you accept? Before Layla could answer, the suite's elevator chimed. The doors opened and a girl stepped out, and Layla's breath caught. Amira Al-Mazrui was ethereally beautiful, with luminous dark eyes and black hair cascading past her shoulders. She wore designer clothes that probably cost more than Layla's entire wardrobe, yet carried herself with the defeated posture of someone who'd forgotten how to hope. But it was her eyes that arrested Layla. They held the same haunted emptiness Layla had seen in her own mirror after her father's death. Their gazes met across the vast room, and in that suspended moment, something unexpected sparked. Recognition, perhaps, or challenge. Amira's eyes narrowed slightly, assessing this strange girl in the modest abaya sitting on her grandfather's sofa. Then she did something that shocked everyone present. She pulled out her phone, typed rapidly, and held it up for all to see. The message, in English, was devastatingly simple. Who is she, Jiddo? And why does she look at me like she can see my soul? Sheikh Rashid's voice was gentle but firm. This is Layla Hassan, and if you'll allow it, she's going to be your friend. Amira's expression shifted, suspicion mixing with something that might have been curiosity or perhaps longing. She typed again, I don't need charity friends. Layla stood slowly, her father's book still in her hands. Without planning it, without thinking, she responded, not with her voice, but by opening her book and pointing to a line of Arabic poetry her father had underlined. الوحدة لا تعني أن تكون وحيدا، إنها أن تكون محاطا بأشخاص لا يرونك. Loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by people who don't see you. Amira's phone nearly slipped from her fingers. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, a crack appeared in her carefully constructed walls. She stared at Layla for a long, trembling moment. Then slowly, she typed one word, stay. The first week at the Al-Mazrui estate was a study in contradictions. Layla's new quarters, a guest house larger than her former apartment, felt simultaneously luxurious and isolating. Crystal chandeliers illuminated her loneliness. Silk sheets couldn't warm the cold uncertainty that kept her awake at night. Her mother had been promoted to head of housekeeping at the hotel, Richardson's furious objections overruled by a single phone call from the Sheikh. But they saw each other rarely now,
separated by the gulf between Emirates Hills and the staff quarters of the Azure Pearl. Amira remained an enigma wrapped in designer silence. Every morning, Layla would arrive at the main house, a palatial structure of white stone and impossible gardens, to find Amira in the library, surrounded by books she never read. The girl would acknowledge Layla's presence with the barest nod, then return to staring at nothing. Layla tried everything. She read poetry aloud, shared stories of her father, asked gentle questions that went unanswered except through terse phone messages. Not today. Leave me alone. You don't understand. On the 8th day, frustration finally cracked Layla's patience. She found Amira on the terrace overlooking the infinity pool, watching the sunset paint Dubai's skyline in shades of amber and rose. You're right, Layla said quietly, sitting uninvited beside her. I don't understand. I don't understand how someone surrounded by everything can feel like they have nothing. I don't understand how you can breathe the same air as your grandfather who loves you desperately, yet feel suffocated.
Amira's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't leave. But I do understand what it feels like when the person who taught you how to live suddenly stops breathing. I understand waking up and forgetting they're gone, reaching for the phone to call them. I understand the guilt of laughing at something funny, then remembering you're supposed to be sad. Amira's hand trembled on her phone. I understand that talking about them feels like betrayal, but not talking about them feels like erasure. That you're trapped between remembering and forgetting, and both options feel like death. A single tear traced down Amira's perfect cheek. Then, for the first time in 6 months, she spoke. Her voice was rusty, broken, beautiful. How do you survive it? Lila's heart nearly stopped. Amira's voice, raw, vulnerable, real, hung between them like a sacred offering. You don't survive it, Layla answered honestly. You just survive through it, one breath at a time. Some days are easier. Some days you forget how to breathe at all. Amira turned to face her fully, mascara-streaked tears carving rivers through her carefully applied makeup. Everyone tells me to move on, to be strong, to honor their memory by living fully. Her voice cracked. But how do I live fully when half of me died with them? Before Layla could respond, hurried footsteps echoed across the terrace. Sheikh Rashid appeared, his face transformed by desperate hope. Amira, Habibti, you spoke? I heard... But the moment shattered like dropped crystal. Amira's expression closed, walls slamming back into place. She stood abruptly, phone clutched like a shield, and fled into the house without looking back. The sheikh turned to Layla, eyes glistening. What did you do? What did you say to her? The truth, Layla whispered. I told her the truth about grief. That night, Layla found a note slipped under her door. Amira's handwriting was elegant, educated, but the words were anything but composed. My father used to say I could change the world. My mother said I was their greatest adventure. Now they're gone, and I'm just empty, a hollow shell pretending to be their daughter. Everyone expects me to be strong, to be the perfect Al-Mazrui heir. But I'm not strong. I'm broken, and I'm so tired of pretending I'm not. At the bottom, in smaller script, meet me in the library at midnight. There's something I need to show you, something no one else knows. Please don't tell Jiddo. Layla's hands trembled as she read the words again. This was progress, terrifying, dangerous progress. Amira was finally reaching out. But why the secrecy? What could she possibly need to hide from her grandfather, who'd moved heaven and earth to help her? As midnight approached, Layla made her way through the sleeping mansion, her father's poetry book tucked under her arm like a talisman. The library doors stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the darkened hallway. Inside, Amira waited, but she wasn't alone. A young man stood beside Amira in the library's golden light, perhaps 20, devastatingly handsome, dressed in casual clothes that screamed expensive simplicity. His arm rested protectively around Amira's shoulders, and the intimacy between them was unmistakable. Layla froze in the doorway. "This is Zaid," Amira said, her voice stronger now, defiant. "We met at school in Switzerland. He's the reason I was expelled." Zaid extended his hand, his smile charming but edged with wariness. "The famous Layla. Amira's told you about you." Layla's mind raced. "Does the Sheikh know you're here?" "No," Amira said quickly, "and he can't ever. Jiddo would never approve. Zaid's family—" She stopped, biting her lip. "My father works in finance, not quite the pedigree the Al-Mazruris expect for their princess." Understanding crashed over Layla like a wave. This wasn't just teenage rebellion. This was dangerous, a secret that could explode Amira's fragile healing and destroy the trust Layla had barely begun to build. "Amira," Layla said carefully, "why are you telling me this?" Tears filled Amira's eyes. "Because Zaid's being deported. His visa expires in 3 days, and his family can't afford to fight it. He's the only person who understood my grief, who didn't treat me like broken porcelain. Without him, I'll have nothing again. I need your help," Amira continued desperately. "You're close to Jiddo now. He listens to you. If you could convince him to help Zaid's family, to sponsor them somehow."
You want me to lie to him? Layla's stomach twisted. To manipulate the man who saved my mother's livelihood, who gave me this opportunity? I'm asking you to help me save the one thing keeping me alive. Amira's composure crumbled completely. Please, Layla, you said you understood grief. Prove it. Help me not lose someone else I love. Zaid pulled Amira closer, his expression sympathetic but calculating. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. Layla looked between them, Amira's tear-stained desperation and Zaid's too perfect concern. Something felt wrong, discordant, like a note played off-key in a symphony. But what if she was wrong? What if this was real, and refusing meant watching Amira spiral back into silence? I need time to think, Layla said finally. We don't have time, Amira grabbed her arm. Please, you're my only hope. Outside, thunder rumbled over Dubai. Rare, ominous. The first drops of rain began to fall. Layla didn't sleep. She sat in her guest house, her father's poetry book open on her lap, reading his Marginalia by lamplight. One note, written in his careful hand beside a Rumi verse, seemed to glow. True love reveals itself through sacrifice, but manipulation disguises itself as desperation. Know the difference, my Layla. Listen not just to words, but to the silence between them. At dawn, she made her decision. She found Sheikh Rashid in his study, already awake, reviewing documents. He looked up, surprised. Layla, is everything all right? No, sir, it's not. She took a breath. Amira spoke to me yesterday. Real conversation. His face transformed with joy. That's wonderful. Why do you look so troubled? Because last night she asked me to deceive you. The joy evaporated. Explain. Layla told him everything. Zaid, the deportation, Amira's desperate plea. As she spoke, she watched the Sheikh's expression shift from shock to anger to something more complex, understanding, tinged with deep sadness. You did the right thing, though I imagine it wasn't easy. It wasn't,
But my father taught me that trust, once broken, can never be fully repaired. I couldn't betray yours even for Amira." The sheikh stood, walked to the window overlooking his estate. "This boy, Zaid, I know his family. His father embezzled from 3 companies before fleeing to Switzerland. The son learned well." He turned to face her. "He's not being deported for visa issues. He's fleeing fraud charges. Interpol has a warrant." Layla's blood ran cold. "Amira doesn't know." "No. She sees a kindred spirit in grief. He sees an Al-Mazrui fortune." His voice hardened. "We need to tell her, together. Will you stand with me?" "Always, sir." They found Amira in the library, Zaid beside her, both looking startled by the early intrusion. Amira's eyes found Layla's, and understanding dawned, followed by betrayal so complete it was physically painful to witness. "You told him. You promised—" "I made no promises, and I'm glad I didn't." Sheikh Rashid stepped forward, holding out a tablet. "Amira, Habibti, look at this. Really look." On the screen, police reports, financial records, evidence of Zaid's deception. As Amira read, her face drained of color. Zaid's expression shifted from charming to calculating to desperate. "Amira, Habibti, this is all a misunderstanding," he began. "Get out." Her voice was steel wrapped in ice. "Get out of my grandfather's house, now." Security was called. Zaid was escorted away, his protests fading into the morning air. When he was gone, Amira collapsed into a chair, shaking. "He was using me. The whole time. I thought someone finally understood." "Someone does understand. Your grandfather, me, everyone who truly loves you. But Amira, you have to let us in. Real connection requires real vulnerability, not secrets kept in midnight libraries." Amira looked up, tears streaming. "How do I trust anyone again? How do I know what's real?" "You start by trusting yourself. Your instincts told you something was wrong. That's why you needed me there last night. You knew, deep down, you just weren't ready to face it alone." For a long moment, Amira was silent. Then slowly, she reached out and took Layla's hand. "Will you help me? Really help me? No more secrets?"
"No more secrets," Layla promised. Sheikh Rashid's voice was thick with emotion. "Both of you, no more secrets from each other. We face everything together now, as family." Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone's feelings and telling them a difficult truth? What did you do, and how did it turn out? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most important growth. 3 months transformed everything. Amira began speaking regularly, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. She and Layla became inseparable. 2 souls bonded by shared grief and hard-won trust. They studied languages together, Amira's natural gift for dialects emerging like a flower after rain. They volunteered at refugee centers, translating for families navigating Dubai's complex systems. They laughed, argued, healed. But the true test came unexpectedly. Richardson, still bitter about his humiliation, had been quietly building a case against Fatima. Fabricated complaints, missing inventory he'd stolen himself, forged documents suggesting theft. On a humid afternoon, he presented his evidence to the hotel's board, demanding her termination and criminal charges. Layla learned about it from her frantic mother's call. "Habibi, they're saying I stole from the hotel. Expensive linens, Sluver. I would never." "I know, Mama. I'm coming." But Amira overheard. "We're both coming. And we're bringing Jiddo." What Richardson hadn't anticipated was Sheikh Rashid Al-Mazrui walking into that emergency board meeting flanked by his granddaughter and Layla, carrying a folder of his own evidence. "Gentlemen, Before you destroy an innocent woman's life, perhaps you should review these security recordings. The footage was damning. Richardson himself, late at night, removing items from inventory and planting them in Fatima's locker. His shocked face as the video played was almost comical. "You're finished, Richardson. Not just here, everywhere. I'll personally ensure no hotel in the Emirates employs you again." But Amira stepped forward, her voice clear and strong, the voice of someone who'd found her power. "And I'll make sure every social media platform knows exactly what you tried to do. You wanted to destroy a woman for the crime of having a daughter braver than you'll ever be." Richardson's protests died unspoken. Within an hour, he was escorted from the building by security. Fatima collapsed into Layla's arms, sobbing with relief. "How did you know? How did you get that footage?" Sheikh Rashid smiled. "I own the hotel. I know everything that happens in my properties. I've been watching Richardson for months, waiting for him to expose himself fully." "But why wait?" Layla asked. "Why not fire him immediately?" "Because," Amira answered, understanding blooming on her face, "justice that's rushed is often incomplete. Jiddo taught me that. Wait for the full picture, then act decisively." The sheikh nodded approvingly at his granddaughter. "Exactly. And now, Mrs. Hassan, I have a proposition. I am establishing a new hospitality training center for underprivileged workers across the Emirates. I need someone who understands both the work and the workers to run it. Someone with integrity, experience, and compassion." Fatima's eyes widened. "Your Excellency, I'm just a housekeeper." "You're a woman who raised an extraordinary daughter while bearing impossible burdens with dignity. That's the qualification that matters most." Tears flowed freely now. Relief, joy, vindication. But the greatest moment came when Amira turned to Layla, her eyes shining. "You saved my voice. Now let me help you find yours. Jiddo and I have been discussing something." The sheikh pulled out an envelope. "A full scholarship to the American University of Dubai. Linguistics program. Your father's dream for you, Layla. It's time to make it real." Layla's hands trembled as she held the acceptance letter. Her father's poetry book slipped from her grasp, falling open to a page he'd marked years ago. "من يزرع بذور القنت سيحصد حقول المعجزات." Those who plant seeds of kindness will harvest fields of miracles. "We accept," Fatima whispered, pulling her daughter close. "We both accept." 2 years later, the Azure Pearl Hotel's grand ballroom hosted an event unlike any in its history. Not a wedding or corporate gala, but a graduation celebration for the first class of the Sheikh Al-Mazrui Hospitality Institute. Layla stood on the podium, no longer the invisible girl in a modest abaya, but a confident young woman in elegant professional attire. Her mother sat in the front row beside Sheikh Rashid, both beaming with pride. Amira, now
studying international relations at Oxford, had flown home specifically for this moment. "My father once told me that language builds bridges between souls," Layla began, her voice steady and clear. "But I've learned that kindness builds the foundation those bridges rest upon. Recognition builds the roads that lead to them. And courage builds the first step that allows us to cross." She looked at the graduates, former housekeepers, janitors, servers, all transformed by education and opportunity. "You were invisible once. Society trained its eyes to look past you, to see your uniforms but never your faces, your labor but never your potential. Today, that changes. Today you become visible, not because someone granted you permission, but because you claimed the dignity that was always yours." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, as sunset painted Dubai's skyline in gold and amber, Layla found Amira on the hotel's rooftop terrace, the same place where her journey had begun with a single answered question in classical Arabic. "Remember when you asked me how to survive grief?" Amira said softly. "You told me you survive through it, one breath at a time." "I remember. I've been breathing easier lately, actually living, not just existing," Amira smiled. "Thank you for teaching me the difference." "We taught each other," Layla corrected. "You showed me that privilege isn't about what you have, but what you choose to do with it. That true nobility comes from lifting others, not standing above them." Sheikh Rashid joined them, his weathered face creased with contentment. "Your father would be proud, Layla, of who you've become, of what you've built." "We built it together, sir, all of us." Layla looked out over the city where she'd once felt invisible, now gleaming with possibility. Every person who chose courage over comfort, every voice that refused to stay silent, every hand that reached back to lift another up. Her mother appeared, carrying a worn poetry book, her father's book, now carefully restored and preserved. "Habibi, I found this passage marked. He wrote a note in the margin. I think he knew. Somehow he knew." Layla read her father's final notation, written in his careful hand beside a verse about destiny. "My Layla, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But remember, you carry within you every word I taught you, every lesson we shared, every dream I held for your future. Don't let the world's blindness dim your light. Speak, step forward, answer the questions others fear. Your voice will change everything. I love you beyond words, beyond time, beyond death itself. Baba." The tears came then, but they were clean tears. Grief transformed into gratitude, loss reshaped into legacy. As the Dubai skyline lit up against the darkening sky, 4 people stood together on that rooftop. A grandfather who'd learned to see beyond wealth, a granddaughter who'd found her voice again, a mother who'd sacrificed everything and received everything back tenfold, and a young woman who'd answered a single question in classical Arabic and changed the trajectory of countless lives. "What do you think happens next?" Amira asked, her voice full of wonder. Layla smiled, holding her father's book close to her heart. "Whatever we choose to build, together." And in that moment, surrounded by love and possibility, she finally understood what her father had always known, that wisdom, courage, and kindness were the only currencies that truly mattered, that one voice, speaking truth at the right moment, could shatter the glass ceilings of class and circumstance, that the invisible could become unforgettable, not by demanding recognition, but by earning it through grace, knowledge, and the quiet courage to step forward when everyone else stayed silent. The call to evening prayer drifted across the city, a reminder that every ending was also a beginning. And Layla Hassan, daughter of a professor and a housekeeper, bridge builder between worlds, was ready for whatever came next. This story is about finding your voice when the world tells you to stay silent. What's one moment in your life when you chose courage over comfort? When you stepped forward even though you were scared? Share your story below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to find their own courage. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it with someone who needs a reminder that their voice matters. Because it does. Every single voice matters. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We love seeing how far these stories of hope and courage travel around the world.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Bye!